The marvelous adventures and enduring legend of Baron Münchhausen. Imagine a man who could lasso the moon with a silken cord, ride a cannonball across enemy lines, and pull himself, and his horse, out of a swamp by his own hair. Picture a dinner guest whose stories are so outrageous, so delightfully absurd, that you can't help but believe them, if only for the joy of the telling. This is the legend of Baron Münchhausen, the world's most inventive storyteller, whose tall tales have leapt from campfire to classic literature and continue to inspire wild imagination centuries after his death. I, the real Baron, from battlefield to banquet table. Baron Hieronymus Karl Friedrich von Münchhausen was born in 1720 in Bodenwerder, in what is now Lower Saxony, Germany. The Münchhausen family was minor nobility, and young Hieronymus grew up with the privileges of his class: education, hunting, and eventually a commission in the Russian army, where he served with distinction during campaigns against the Ottoman Turks. Yet it was not on the battlefield but in retirement that Münchhausen found his true calling. Settling back in Bodenwerder, he became the life of local gatherings, spinning ever more extravagant yarns about his adventures abroad. Friends and neighbors would gather around him, eager for his latest episode of daring-do or miraculous escape. He told these stories with such a straight face, such convincing detail, and such a glimmer of mischief, that his audiences believed he might, just possibly, be telling the truth. Second, the birth of a folklore icon. Münchhausen's stories quickly spread beyond his circle of acquaintances. They became favorites in German taverns, passed from mouth to mouth, growing more fantastic with every retelling. The Baron's reputation as a prince of liars was cemented, not as a mark of ridicule, but as a badge of honor. He was a master entertainer, a fabulist whose exaggerations delighted rather than deceived. Soon, the stories took on a life of their own. Writers and satirists, recognizing the comic potential of Münchhausen's persona, began to collect and publish them. The most famous of these adaptations was by Rudolf Erich Raspe, an adventurer and scholar with a taste for the absurd. In 1785, Raspe published Baron Münchhausen's narrative of his marvelous travels and campaigns in Russia, a book that would immortalize the Baron on the world stage. Third, outrageous exploits, the tales that made the Baron a legend. What made Münchhausen's stories so irresistible? At their heart was the Baron's matter-of-fact delivery, a tone so calm and reasonable, even the most impossible feats seemed plausible. His adventures were a blend of wit, satire, and outright fantasy, always delivered with a wink and a nudge. Riding the cannonball. Perhaps his most famous tale is the one in which he mounts a cannonball during a siege, soaring above the battlefield with a cavalier's grace. When his own cannonball begins to lag behind, he deftly switches to another mid-flight, eventually landing safely behind enemy lines. The image is so vivid, so gleefully absurd, that it continues to inspire artists and filmmakers to this day. The Silver Hatchet and the Moon. In another classic, the Baron claims to have hurled a silver hatchet at the moon, only to find it tethered to Earth by a silken cord. He climbs skyward, explores lunar landscapes, and returns with treasures unknown to mortal men. Adventures in the belly of a fish. Shipwrecked and swallowed whole by a monstrous fish, Münchhausen doesn't despair. Instead, he lights a fire in the creature's belly, hosts a lively dance, and eventually escapes through the fish's mouth. None the worse for wear. Outwitting nature. The Baron's relationship with the natural world is one of comic dominance. He lassos wild animals, rides wolves, plants cherry trees on the antlers of a stag, and once, famously, pulls himself out of a muddy swamp by his own hair, horse and all. Each story pokes fun at the tall tales of hunters and soldiers, taking exaggeration to the farthest, funniest extreme. 4. Raspe, Burger, and the literary afterlife. While Münchhausen may have been the original storyteller, his legend owes much to the writers who preserved and expanded his adventures. Rudolf Erich Raspe's English language book brought the Baron to a wider audience, blending folklore with Enlightenment skepticism and a healthy dose of satire. Rasps Münchhausen is not just a braggart but a wry commentator on the gullibility of his listeners and the absurdity of the world. Gottfried August Berger, a German poet, soon published his own version, embellishing the stories with even greater flair. Berger's Münchhausen became a symbol of the German Romantic imagination, a figure who delighted in the impossible and mocked the pretensions of the age. Translations and adaptations multiplied across Europe. The Baron's adventures appeared in dozens of languages, inspired illustrations by Gustave Doré and others, and became the basis for plays, operas, films, and even animated cartoons. V. The Baron in popular culture. From page to screen. The legend of Baron Münchhausen has proven remarkably resilient, inspiring new generations of artists and dreamers. Some of the most notable adaptations include Terry Gilliam's 1988 film, The Adventures of Baron Münchhausen, a fantastical romp through the Baron's most famous exploits, blending humor, surrealism, and biting social commentary. Animated adaptations in Russia, Germany, and beyond, each putting their own spin on the Baron's impossible feats. Stage plays and operas, often using Münchhausen as a vehicle to satirize politics, war, or human folly. In each retelling, the Baron remains fundamentally unchanged, a cheerful liar, a master of the tall tale, and a hero whose greatest weapon is his imagination. 6. The man behind the myth, Münchhausen's real life and legacy. Ironically, the real Baron Münchhausen was reportedly less than thrilled by his literary fame. Though he enjoyed telling stories, he resented the wild exaggerations and satirical edge of Raspe's and Berger's books. Lawsuits followed. The Baron tried, unsuccessfully, to clear his name of what he saw as slander. Yet the legend could not be contained. He became a global symbol of creative exaggeration, a figure celebrated not for his veracity, but for his inventiveness. The term MünchhausenSyndrome even entered medical parlance, describing those who feign illness for attention, a testament to his enduring association with artful deception. 7th. Why Baron Münchhausen still matters. What sets Münchhausen apart from other folkloric figures is the spirit of his stories. They are not mere lies or deceptions, but celebrations of the boundless human imagination. In an age where truth is often stranger than fiction, the Baron reminds us that the line between the possible and the impossible is often a matter of perspective and of storytelling skill. His tales invite us to suspend disbelief, to laugh at the world's absurdities, and to embrace the joy of invention. He is every child who ever dreamed of flying to the moon, every adult who embellishes a fishing story, every artist who dares to create a new reality. Conclusion. The last laugh of Baron Münchhausen. Baron Münchhausen died in 1797, but his legend is as alive as ever. Whether riding cannonballs, feasting inside a fish, or simply spinning yarns by the fireside, he endures as the world's most lovable liar. A reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures are those we invent for ourselves. So the next time you find yourself tempted to embellish a story, remember the Baron and know that in the right company, a well-told tall tale can become immortal.